Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 simple steps to help build better decks. So this is great if you're looking to try something new and you want to really understand how to build decks for yourself opposed to just importing them from playgwent.com. So in order to get started here, you guys got to pick a faction. For the sake of the video, we're just going to be doing Qcento, but you guys can go ahead and pick whatever you like here. So the first step is to understand the meta. Right now, I think it's safe to assume that there's really 4 key players in the meta, 4 decks that really stand out above everything else, and it's pretty well narrowed to some sort of assimilate variant with Nilfgaard. We have Skellige variants, generally speaking of Reckless Flurry and that control / discard type deck that we're seeing, and then the meditating mages and the alumni, all that sort of thing with inspired zeal from Northern Realms. And then I've been seeing a lot of Nature's Gift still. It's still very prominent with Qcento, which is a huge boosty type deck. So you got to look at maybe what these decks have in common, and a lot of what they have in common are engines within a few of them here. So Qcento's super engine heavy with their meta decks right now. We have Northern Realms, which is just built off of engines. You have Nilfgaard, that's huge on assimilate engines, and they get out of hand really quick. And you know, Skellige is more of a deploy effect and stuff like that, you know, and just having specials as well. But you know, again, if you're playing engines into that, then you're going to get a diminishing return in that matchup. So that's kind of some of the similarities that we see. So we have to take all these elements into consideration when building a deck. It's very difficult to build one deck specifically that counters everything. I don't even know if that's necessarily possible. However, we're going to do the best that we can to put something together that's pretty well rounded and can win against every deck, even if the odds are, you know, not in our favor sometimes. And for the second step, we have to look at what we're looking to do. And I mean this, besides win the game, we have to have a core strategy of how we're going to get more points than our opponent. So examples of that could be a swarm deck. With swarm decks, you're going wide and putting a bunch of units on the board and boosting them all to hopefully outpoint your opponent and not be at risk of tall punish. So they have to have wide punish teched into their deck in order to beat you in this case, because your points are so spread out. Then we have just a tall point slam deck, and basically there's no regard for tall punish in this. You're just putting out points as quickly as possible to out tempo your opponent, and of course you are vulnerable to tall punish. However, wide punish won't necessarily do much against you, so that's often a viable strategy as well. And then you have engine based decks where you put out a bunch of innocent looking cards that accumulate in value as the round goes longer, and you know, before too long become very overwhelming and generally very difficult to control. They often have a bigger payout than if you just put down a point slam, because they're engines, like I said, and they just keep going and going and going. So that's probably what we're looking at most in the meta right now, are the engine heavy decks. So we have to look at, you know, basically what the last type of deck is here, being a control type deck. And I think that control is probably what we're going to use for the example in this one here, because I think it would be the most effective to show you for what we're dealing with most of the time here. So control decks are built solely to take on pretty well any matchup and stop their core strategy from working. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of preventing engine decks from working by killing off the engines before they get a lot of value. I get a lot of satisfaction from, you know, taking on swarm decks and punishing those rows before they get the huge payoff that they're looking for. And of course, tall punish is definitely nice when you see a huge 20-30 point unit and you just hit it with the heat wave, for example. So again, I'm going to build something that kind of goes and is very well rounded to the 3 types of decks that we described. And for the exercise, we have to decide basically the next step here. Moving on to step 3, what leader ability best complements my strategy? So because we're playing Qcento and we're looking for something that's going to help assist or aid with damage, there are a lot of leader abilities that are boosty, like the Invigorate and the Nature's Gift and Mahakam Forge. Then you sort of have something neutral like Elven Deadeye and Call of Harmony, where these are just sort of point slams. And then it really only leaves you with a couple viable options. Guerrilla Tactics can be used offensively to deal damage, or Precision Strike can be used, of course, to deal damage as well. I think we're going to go ahead with Precision Strike for this one here, just because I want to get more effective damage pings and play a little bit more precise than having to shell out 2 damage per charge in this case. If you found like you wanted a bit more provisions with the deck, you could opt for Guerrilla Tactics, and that should just be fine. But let's just do Precision Strike here. So I threw something together just really quickly for the sake of time, and that brings us to our next step here. What are our win conditions? So we have to win 2 rounds in order to win a game, and we have to figure out how we're going to do that. Of course, we want to win one of the rounds with spending as little resources possible, or as little golds as possible. It would be nice to win a round off playing our bronzes so that we have our best cards for later on in the game. It's not always the case, but that's kind of what we're looking to aim for. So in order to do that, what we're going to be doing is looking at a round 1 of playing very standoffish and just denying value through throwing some, low provision bombs out and whatnot. So we have things like the Dimeridian bomb that's going to deal damage. We have making a bomb that's going to do damage. We've got little things like the Pyrotech that are just going to be, a really good proactive play. If we're on blue coin, we can just put this down and not have to worry about it because a lot of our deck is deploy. And so, again, getting rid of engine value is going to definitely make a difference, especially if we're going second, right? Because our opponent's going to have to put things down and really try to get things started, but they're not going to be getting value throughout the round. And then what's nice about these bombs is that it actually helps us get out Madoc and get some more damage from what we're doing as well, so it makes the bombs that much better value. We can afford to put down Dunka if we're going first, and we can put this and boost it with our stratagem so that we're getting carryover and boosting units in our hand. And of course the goal in round 1 is to play as many specials as possible, because even though Herald Gord saw a little bit of a nerf, it's still not a bad card, right? We're getting a boost on it for every special that we play, and that's why we're looking at going a little bit lower unit. We're at the minimum amount of units for this deck because we don't want to play very interactive. We want to just respond to what they're doing. But the huge payoff in round 3 is going to be things like the Gourd and things like the Saber-Toothed Tiger, where, they're going to amount to quite a bit of points because they're not able to be targeted. And, we're going to be just saving these huge point slams with the Gourd and whatnot, and with the Synthesis, right? Because they can't target something with immunity. So these are really good examples of like our payoff cards later on after we've established one round from our lower end bronze cards. So the goal of this deck here is to take round 1 by any means. We have to have the utilities to do so. So I've teched in a Simlas here. Simlas is ideally going to be pulling our Lacerates here, and Simlas round 1 is completely fine. So this could be, again, our win condition for round 1, and then our other win condition, as previously mentioned, could be our round 3 play. It doesn't really matter. It's just you have to have 2 ideas of rounds based on the hand that you have. So with Simlas, a lot of players like to take their thinning in round 1. So for example, double Lacerate really helps because it's going to give us phenomenal value, especially if the opponent's really pushing and pushing and pushing. This will automatically put them in a lose on even scenario, so that will help us save a lot of other really effective resources like Heat Wave, Gale Professional, Force Protector, Gourd, the finishing play, all that sort of stuff. Any sort of carryover we establish with Dunka, these things will be saved for later on. So, having that one big commitment in a round is not the end of the world. You don't have to save everything and then lose the round as an outcome. So now that we looked at our win conditions here, understanding kind of how we're going to be playing the deck that we've made, how can we improve the consistency of what we're looking to find? So how can we make sure that we get our win conditions? And this would be step number 5. So one of the things that I kept in mind is we want cards that are going to help thin the deck out. So with this specific deck, I have Madoc in here. It's great for the extra value that it gives off the removal with the bombs and stuff. But when we play a bomb, which are very easy to come by here, we've got 6 from what I can see, the Madoc is going to summon itself from our deck. So automatically, just by playing this card, we're bringing out another card. and that's going to save provisions on tutors and things like that that we have to use to go and find cards from our deck, because, you know, it's just voluntarily coming out of the deck. So I really like it for that reason. And Simlas is another really good reason, you know, a good way to bring out things from our deck and improve consistency. That's why I'm not shy to play Simlas round 1, because Simlas helps us pull all copies of a bronze special card. So by playing this card here, we're able to actually go and we're able to pull out 2 lacerates or 2 bombs if we need them. Ideally, it's not the bomb you're looking for in this case. It would be like the lacerates or rebukes, but again, that's helping get additional 2 cards out of the deck. So you can imagine that if you're playing these things and you're playing a bomb in the first round, you're getting tons of stuff out of the deck. It's going to be very hard for an opponent to keep up with the tempo that we have, and as the game goes on, we're going to make sure that we pull every single card that we need to win the game. And lastly, I mean, there's an added benefit with this deck specifically, which is why we're not putting on Neuromancy and any of those really expensive tutors, because Brocklon Sentinel is huge. This one here, basically, it's going to be summoned from our leader. We're going to be able to spawn and play one of them, and if we get a death blow with it, it's going to bring out these 2 voluntarily. So this deck plays super lean and thin. I did tech in one sort of tutor though. I felt like this was absolutely necessary. The Isengrim's Council. It's one of those things that if we don't pull Gord, we might not win the game, and that's kind of how it works with this deck, right? That's the liability that we have. So with Gord, you know, I made sure, okay, we'll put a backup Dwarf in there. We'll put a, you know, we'll put a Dryad just so we have something for that. And we'll put, of course, a couple Elves. If we don't pull Simlas, we could reach for them. Didn't want to put too many Elves so that we have a likelihood of choosing it. But again, just a couple of each so that we have something we can play off this no matter what. And this is going to be just pulling out that win condition that we might have missed. So that's kind of how we want to improve our, you know, consistency. And here's the thing, when you focus on too much consistency and too many cards like Neuromancy and Royal Decree and all types of different ones like that, you are losing provisions that you could be spending on making your deck stronger. So you want to kind of focus on looking at maybe about 2 or 3 per deck at most, Simlas being 1, and, you know, Isengrim's Council being 2, Madoc being 3. We have the added luxury of having the Sentinel access, but most decks don't have a leader ability that thins out the rest of, you know, extra units. So again, it's sort of specific to this strategy. So with that in mind, you kind of have an idea of what you're playing, why we put it together, how it's going to work, and sort of an overall strategy for a round 1 and a round 2. And we'll keep it pretty simple today. I don't want to deliver too much information, but eventually we can get into some more advanced strategies and things of that sort when it comes to deck building. But hopefully you guys found it useful. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think, and stick around for more content on a regular basis. Thank you.